Wow.
This is exciting.
It's exciting. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, this series, today's the 30th anniversary of the Waco siege. Yeah, and I know this series, you did a series that looked at the Waco siege, and now this is revisiting it. It's the aftermath. What is it about Waco that made you want to return to this story?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people, when I told them I was making a sequel to Waco, they said, didn't you do it all? I mean, that was the whole thing, right? And, you know, granted, that was the event, yes, but obviously an event like that is like a meteor crashing into the earth. You know, it's going to have seismic consequences, and I really think it's worth exploring. You know, these incidents, they don't just exist in a vacuum, and everything is connected and everything leads to the next thing, and that's what was so worthwhile to explore.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Waco, and Waco is sort of in many ways, if not the birth of the modern militia movement, definitely part of the trajectory for it, right? Yeah,
and just sowing, you know, this distrust in the government. You know, a lot of times when I think about anarchy, I think, well, what is it that really frightens people about anarchy? What is the thing that you would lose in a state of anarchy that is so significant? And the answer that I keep coming up with is, well, the government keeps you safe. Like, the government exists in order to keep the population safe, taken care of, and if the government isn't doing that, it's really kind of worthless. Like, there is no reason for it to exist, and it does that in a variety of ways. You know, whether it's, you know, the most obvious way is just keeping us safe from harm, but also helping us to take care of ourselves and be able to take care of ourselves and live somewhere where we don't have to worry about our own well-being all the time. Yeah. Like, that's, as far as I can tell, why it's there.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think in an ideal sense, yes, right? Now, I spend a lot of time out in the road. I talk to a lot of folks who have this inherent distrust in the government, right? That don't see it as something that serves a role to support and to protect. It's something you should be distrustful of. I think Waco is an experience that was complicating for a lot of folks. It was the government didn't handle it perhaps the way they could have or should have. You even make the series at a time that was pre what happened in January 6th. The series originally looks at sort of this extremism. And now since then, we've seen what is extremism in a series like that now make its way onto the front pages, onto the steps of the Capitol. January 6th has now happened. How does that affect approaching telling the story again?
Well, geez, I mean, it just makes me wonder, like, because things keep happening that you think there's no way this could ever happen. And then it happens. And so I'm like, well, what's the next thing after January 6th? And what's fascinating is that the fellow I'm playing, Gary Nessner, who's an actual real person, and has an incredible book I highly recommend everybody read, called Stalling for Time. But Waco is one chapter in his book. As, like I said, as cataclysmic an event as it was, he's got all these incidents that he's dealt with over the years on micro and macro levels. And he is very reluctant. He's not looking to vilify anybody or say, oh, you know, and he would agree that situation in Waco was an incredibly complicated situation, and he has doubts himself about how he handled it. He certainly has doubts about how other people handled it, but he doesn't think there's like a big bad wolf or anything like that. But I think it's extraordinarily compelling, I think, this story, and I think it's extraordinarily valuable to realize that no matter how outlandish an event is, that there is something even more outlandish just around the corner. Yeah. And I think that's why the story is worth keeping in the forefront of our minds. I also think it's
Are you telling that because you're a storyteller and you're like, next season, like you got two things out of this already. You're like, and you think you've seen this so far. The aftermath. Are we pitching it now?
Well, there are actually, Gary and I, because Gary and I have actually become very good friends.
Oh, you bought the IP. I see what it is. Okay, yeah, all right. Mm-hmm.
Well, Gary, I think it's important to point out, too, that I'm absolutely nothing like Gary. Like, I don't look like Gary. I don't sound like Gary.
Were you like the second, third, fourth choice? Is that what you say?
Yeah. It was Danny DeVito, Fisher Stevens, and then me.
Yeah. They're always grabbing your good roles, man.
Yeah. Well, I'm like a catch basin. You know, I get what nobody else wants. But he's like, yeah, we've got to make all the chapters into. And there is a great potential for season 3, but I'm not going to ruin it or tell you. If you read the book, you'll figure it out. Yeah. But anyway, and the only other point I wanted to make is, and I've heard other people, friends of mine, say this. Particularly the Dowdle brothers who made the show, who are just John and Drew, who are just beautiful, beautiful people, and they really, really care. Like, it's not easy to make a show like this. There's going to be a lot of resistance. It's like, really, this is kind of a drag. You want us to, like, yeah, we need to do this. And
like resistance because it's inherently a political story.
Yeah, that's part of it. It's also unpleasant. You know, it's pretty darn unpleasant. Yeah. It's Texas. But I think one of the things that's valuable also about it is that it proves that no matter what side of this debate or issue that you're on, everyone is capable of having a flawed perspective. Mm-hmm. Everyone is. Mm-hmm. And that's also an important thing to remember. And a lot of people pay lip service to that. It's like, well, it's not until we reach across the aisle or whatever, find a common ground. But I think it's really interesting in this situation, in this story, to see how that really is not easy to do for either side, mm-hmm. and how complicated that truly can be in practice, not just as like a catchy slogan, but something that you actually do.
Yeah, well, it's vulnerable to secede any kind of ground, right? So, yeah, admitting that your point of view might be flawed could put you in a position where you suddenly now lose ground to this other side. And I feel like we're constantly fighting those battles today.
Well, and particularly when there are actually lives on the line. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just Thanksgiving and you're not threatening to throw sweet potatoes at your uncle. You know, it's like there are people in a very life and death situation, mm-hmm. And decisions have to get made very quickly. Mm-hmm.
Now, switching gears a little bit here, I'm from Chicago. I know your reputation. I saw you in Chicago perform. Not only are you wonderful on the big screen, but also live in theater. And I know not only do you do live theater, I know you also perform music. You cover historic bands and their historic albums. I know you also do improv. Is there such? We had a what? What? Yeah, kind of. It's sort of. I'm assuming it's like a whose line is it anyway type situation. A lot of props and a lot of. I'm kidding. I wouldn't insult long form improv that way.
I ride the pacifier. It's just funny to see a grown man with a pacifier.
Are you drawn to that types of things? I feel like you're known for your heavier, more dramatic performances. Do you sort of have to indulge the other side?
Oh, gee, I don't know. I feel like I don't do enough. Like, there's things like I should try other things and keep diversifying my portfolio, as it were. But then I think, well, you hear a lot of times just stay in your lane, you know, whether that's with your work or your opinions or whatever, you know, just stay in your lane. So I'm kind of conscious of that too. Like the music stuff, people are always like, what happened to your band or what's going on with that? And I was like, it just started to feel, like, because, I mean, who wants to act their bands are like, I'm embarrassed by them, and I'm an actor, so I don't want to participate in that. Like, I remember when I freaking love Kevin Bacon so much, but I remember seeing like the Bacon brothers on Jay Leno. I was like, oh,
I know. You hear or I hear Joe Scarborough talk about his band, and you're like, God bless. Go with God there, Joe. Go with God.
Or certain people that I won't mention who come into the makeup trailer in the morning and they say, hey, have you heard my album? and then they put it on while everybody's getting their hair done and make you listen to their record.
You haven't done that.
But I said I wasn't going to mention the name. I didn't want to incriminate myself.
Tell me this, Michael Shannon. Tell me there has been a moment where you have walked up very seriously and asked somebody to come to your improv show. Will you?
I never. No. No. Well, I'm usually riding someone else's coattails, though. As you know, I'm performing oftentimes with two of the legendary improvisers of all time, Dave Pasquesi and T.J. Jagodowski.
Yep.
Yes.
So the greatest of all time.
Yes. So, I mean, you could basically just stand on stage next to them and drool on your shoes, and it'll be like, bravo, you know, because nobody's watching you anyway.
I think, though, you're not truly an improviser until you've begged somebody to come to one of your shows.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Well, and because you did the I.O., right?
I did. Yeah.
They would have like 500 shows a day.
Yeah.
It was like one after the other after the other.
Did you ever come and see any of my shows?
No.
No.
Not at one.
Not interested in... I also did Second City, which was literally 2 blocks from your theater. I'm sure you came to see some of that, too.
Well, this is a little corporate, isn't it? It's got a little... Uh-oh. Am I in trouble now?
It's not corporate. It's just owned by venture capitalists now. So if that's
an important
corporate, then maybe it's corporate. Well, I'm glad you could come on here and help me burn down any bridges I have in Chicago.
Oh, God.
Michael,
I'm everyone's favorite arsonist.
Yes. You really come in. On the anniversary of a siege, you came here and you took it to the ground.
Yes,
I appreciate that. Michael Shannon, everyone. New episodes of Waco, The Aftermath stream Fridays and air Sundays on Showtime.